Artists are desperately trying to sell art through social media to the point they became circus acts parading nonsense dances and painting twists just to get some attention. They are making a fool of themselves in the name of the algorithm, constantly pleasing the algorithm gods while slaving away to meet insane upload schedules that are preventing them from actually making great art. In this video I'll give you a blueprint to market and sell your art without becoming a content circus act. Well, the first question we have to ask ourselves is, what is the benefit of these social media pages? Because whatever we are going to do is going to have to replace those benefits. And the benefits are twofold. Number one, you can reach a lot of people, and number two, you can build a community. And so the question becomes, how can we reach a lot of people or build a community without having an audience, without using social media? Well, in order to answer this question, let's just ask ourselves, what is getting a lot of attention in this world besides social media? One of the obvious answers is traditional media institutions. And so the question becomes, how can we make sure that these traditional media institutions are talking about our work when we are complete beginners, complete nobodies, have nothing to offer to them? Well, let's think about this for a moment. What are these traditional media institutions talking about? Well, they are talking about things that people care about, trending things, the elections, social activism, environmental type of stuff. And so one of the things that you should be doing is making sure that your art and that you are part of that narrative, so that when they want to talk about things that they're already talking about, it becomes very likely that they are going to talk about you because you are already part of that narrative. And so how can we do that? Well, a good example of an artist who did that is JR with his project Face to Face. So here's what he did. On the Palestine and Israel border during the war zone, during a conflict, what he did was he went to the people from Palestine and Israel, found people who did the same job, for example, a baker from Israel and a baker from Palestine. Then he took portraits of them, hanged those portraits in large scale on the border, and transformed that war zone into a public exhibition space where people could contemplate the similarities between each other instead of the differences. Not really relieving that conflict, but you get the idea. Beautiful project. Now here's what happens. The media institutions who were already talking about this conflict, who were constantly talking about this conflict, they started talking about JR and his project because it was just perfectly in line with the narrative that they wanted to present on their page. And so what happened is that these media institutions started to massively talk about JR because he put himself into that narrative in a very interesting way. Now with that one project, JR went from being a complete nobody street artist to a massive influence, massive famous global phenomena, giving TED Talks to millions of people, etc., etc. And so a natural question that follows is, how can we do this ourselves? Because for most artists, traveling to a war zone, risking your life is just not really part of the options. And so here's another example of Shepard Fairey. He had a project called Andre the Giant Has a Pause. And this was a simple sticker campaign. He was a simple nobody. And so in a matter of years, he went from a nobody to a global phenomenon with one sticker campaign that was originally just an experiment that he was trying out. And a couple of years after this experiment, he was designing posters for example, the Obama presidential campaign. And so how did he do that? What happened there? What is so special about the sticker campaign that mattered and that resonated with the people? Well, number one, he talked about something that was already a narrative, that was already existing conversation that was going on in the world, and he put himself in that narrative. Number two, he designed something that was extremely reproducible, extremely accessible, extremely provocative, and opening a discussion that people were already having and people wanted to talk about because everybody was talking about it. And so what's the benefit of a guerrilla sticker campaign strategy like this? Well, if we compare it to social media and its insane upload schedule where people have to upload original content every single day in order to reach an audience, it becomes very obvious. Let's talk about this. So what does it mean to upload every single day? Well, number one, it means that you will have to invest an insane amount of time to actually constantly be uploading, constantly reaching your audience. And number two, there's an insane creative investment, a creative struggle that goes on when you have to create something original every single day. With this sticker campaign, you relieve yourself from all of this. You design something once and then you mass produce it, and put it out there in the world. And if the design is good, if the design follows simple principles that I'm outlining, then you can indeed reach massive audiences without doing that insane upload schedule. And can you do this? Well, yes, you can do this. Anyone can design stickers, anyone can print stickers, anyone can hang stickers in cities without traveling to war zones and risking your life. Now, let's say you're a complete beginner and you don't actually have a budget to print tens of thousands of stickers out. You don't have a couple of $100 to test this strategy out. How would this strategy then look under a no budget type of situation? Well, this is absolutely still possible, because in essence, it's not about making something as big as possible. It is about interacting with a community that already exists instead of creating your own community online. And so how does that look in a no budget type of strategy? Well, you could go, for example, to the local community, make a particular mural for a library or any other institution in that local community, and implement some things that the local community cares about. Now, here's the thing. These local newspapers, these local media institutions are constantly searching for local things that are happening to talk about, because there's almost no local things that are happening to talk about. And so you can very easily contact them, and with one simple email, they will in fact talk about your stuff. Here's another strategy. Perhaps you live in an art city that is famous for its graffiti scene. What you could be doing is do guided tours for tourists who are interested in that graffiti scene. This is the same type of principle. It is finding something that people already care about, a narrative that is already being talked about, and then putting yourself in that narrative. And so what would happen in a situation like this? Well, you would be interacting with hundreds of art enthusiasts on a daily basis while making money from that. Is that a massive reach, just like JR becoming globally famous? Of course not. But it's a way for a complete beginner to tap into a narrative, to generate interest out your own art and your own personality and your own brand in a natural, organic way. Now, there are a couple of problems with the advices I just gave. Number one, what if you're an introvert and talking to people during an art walk is actually not an option? Number two, what if you don't like activism art? What if you believe in art for art's sake and you don't want to prostitute your art in function of reaching more people? And number three, what if your ambitions go beyond reaching the local community? Well, in that case, having a on your library is just simply not gonna make the cut. And so what else is out there? What solutions do we have to these problems? Well, one of the answers is to create massive artistic stunts. One of the most famous examples of this is Banksy, who designed a particular artwork that would destroy himself or itself right after it was purchased on auction. Now, this is massive. This is insane. Destroying an artwork right after it is purchased is extremely provocative, an extreme stunt. Of course, it reached millions of people, tens of millions of people, thousands of articles were written about this, thousands of videos were made about this. And so you could create something like this. Now, the obvious problem here is that we are not famous artists and we are not selling our art on massive famous auctions for massive amounts of money. And so the question becomes, what is a beginner strategy that we ourselves would be able to use that would generate potentially the same or a result that is somehow in the same vicinity? One of the things that you could do, for example, is go for an art world record. There's definitely an art world record out there that can be broken because it's actually not that hard to break it. For example, making the most amount of artworks in a 2-hour period or something. And these record-breaking things are always things that media institutions want to talk about because it generates a lot of attention. It's something out of the ordinary, something unique, and so that's part of the options. Another thing that you could do is just to check out what Banksy was doing earlier in his career when he was not famous at all. 20 years before Banksy became famous, he created this exhibition installation type of thing called Turf War, where he was painting live animals in various colors. For example, pigs in the colors of police, or cows in some kind of Andy Warhol-like prints. And believe it or not, the idea that the police force is very similar or has some similarities with animals like pigs is something that is on people's mind. And so this exhibition got a lot of attention, a lot of newspapers were writing about it, a lot of people were communicating about it because it was so provocative. And these are things that are just simply at your disposal. Now, a question that we should ask ourselves is, what are the benefits of this type of approach, a Banksy approach, where you make sure that your artworks do a portion of the marketing by being provocative, by being inflammatory? Well, let's compare it to the social media approach. A couple of things happen here. The first thing that happens is the thing that we already talked about, this constant pressure of having to post original content every single day. But besides that, there's also this feeling of being overwhelmed. Artists feel that they have to become Instagram models, have to become sales experts, have to become social media experts, art handler experts, shipping experts, start their own museum just to have a chance of success. And all of this can feel very overwhelming. And then the third thing that happens is that when you are going on social media and using that as your marketing tool, then over the years, after doing this years and years and years, you will most likely at some point at least partially fall prey to the trap of starting to make art in order to get a lot of likes. And so you start to change what you make in function of what you think people will like, and now your art is suffering from this. And so what are the benefits from this Banksy approach? Well, you don't have to do any of those things. Number one, you will feel less overwhelmed because a portion of all of the things that you need to do, namely the social media aspect and the marketing aspect, is now done by the art itself. And then number two, you obviously don't have to deal with these constant pressures of having to upload every single day. And then number three, the idea that you will fall trap to making stuff that people will like just simply doesn't happen, because making stuff that people won't like actually benefits you in this process. Because when people don't like it, there's going to be conflict, there's going to be some kind of cognitive dissonance in them. They will be more reactive to it, and this can actually help the artwork become more famous and get more recognition instead of lowering its reach. And so depending on your personality as an artist, this approach might work way better for you. You might be able to deal much better with the pressure of having to come up with art that has some kind of provocativeness, that has some kind of inflammatory claims within it. Then you can deal with the pressure of posting daily content online. And so self-awareness is key here. You actually have to know which process will work best for you. Now, the only way you can benefit from the approach that I just outlined is if you are willing to make compromises, if you are willing to change a portion of your art and make it more provocative, make it more inflammatory, transform it so that it can indeed have an impact. But what if you're not willing to do that? What if you're not willing to just change your art in order to have a bigger reach? Well, in order to answer that question, we can just look at Banksy again, because apparently the guy's a genius. Well, here's what he would do. He would take art from himself before he was famous, and then he would go to a museum, have the artwork hidden in a jacket or something, and then he would just hang that artwork in a museum without having any permission to do so. And so what is he doing here? Well, he's not changing the artwork, he's changing his behavior and making his behavior more provocative instead of making the artwork more provocative, with the same results. And so the idea here is exactly the same. What is already being talked about in society, in this case famous museums where a lot of people go to, and then somehow finding a way to make you part of that narrative. Now you might be asking yourself, well, what if I don't want to be provocative at all? What if this is not my personality? And that is a valid claim. I am not saying that you have to become provocative. I'm not saying to become something that you are not. You have to stay true to yourself. Now we have to make a little side note here. I don't believe in fake it till you make it. I don't believe in being something that you are not. If you know that provocativeness is not your true nature, that is not who you are, that you don't make that type of art or be that type of person, then you don't have to try and become that type of person. You have to stay true to who you are. And so a natural question that then follows afterwards is, what are the other options? What if we don't want to become provocative? What else can we do? Well, another thing that you could do is using pop culture to your advantage. Andy Warhol, for example, famously used everyday object and famous people. Why was he doing that? Well, the everyday objects, he was clearly capitalizing on the familiarity that was already existing in those objects. The famous people is obvious, they were famous, and so he was putting himself in that narrative. And so what happens when you are painting Marilyn Monroe, Elvis Presley, Mick Jagger? Well, you are mingling with those people, you are elevating your own status almost to celebrity status, and that is exactly what happened. And so the question we can ask ourselves is, would Andy Warhol be as famous as he is, or was, if he would have made regular portraits of regular people that were not famous? And the answer is obviously not. Now I know what you might be thinking. Andy Warhol was already famous when he made those portraits of famous people, and so of course he had some access to famous people, which makes it more easy to get access to famous people. And so how can you benefit from this Warhol strategy if you're not famous, if you're a complete unknown? Well, in order to answer that question, we should listen to what Andy Warhol had to say about this himself. They always say time changes things, but you actually have to change them yourself by pressing the like button on Dries Ketels' videos, Andy Warhol. And if Andy says this, then who are we really to disagree with this? On a serious note, what if you're not famous yet? How can you benefit from this Warhol strategy? Well, that's a good question, and the truth is, and this will come as a surprise to some people, famous people are not the only thing that is being talked about in the media. There are numerous ways to use pop culture references in your work to tap into those existing narratives. A great example to inspire you is Greg Guillemin or Greg Guillemin. I don't know how to pronounce his name. My apologies. Anyway, he has a series called The Secret Life of Superheroes, where he takes superhero reference images and then he transforms them and makes them do things that are a little bit strange or provocative or sexy in nature. A superhero rolling a particular type of cigarette, or a superhero licking a banana, where you question whether or not it's an actual banana that is being depicted in the image. And so these types of things work because people care about superheroes. There are people in the world who want to consume things about superheroes. They love superheroes, and so putting that in your art will enable you to capture the attention of those people. Another variation on the same theme is Tom Ward with his All Disney series, where he basically did the same thing. He took Disney figures and then let them do everyday boring things like vacuum cleaning the carpet or something, and these things are funny. People who grew up with Disney and are now grown-ups, they will get a laugh out of this. There's an inherent shareability factor to these artworks, and these people who like Disney, who like art, will naturally start sharing these things. And what does that mean when they are naturally sharing these things? Well, it means that you don't have to upload original content every single day yourself. And so if we look at Greg, if we look at Tom Ward, what we see is a similar strategy that works for multiple artists. And whenever something works for multiple artists, it means that the strategy resonates with people, that the strategy simply works. The reality is that technology will change, culture will change, pop culture will change, but human psychology will never change. And so these types of strategies will probably work for eternity. Now, there's one benefit to this strategy that nobody seems to be talking about that has something to do with finding your art style. A lot of artists believe that they need to find their own art style in order to become successful, and they believe that if they don't find it fast enough, that they will miss their chance of being a child prodigy or being an early emerging artist prodigy or something. And there's this constant pressure to finding this art style. A lot of artists, after making years and years of art, don't find that art style, and they feel a particular type of conflict and struggle with that and insecurity that comes with that. And if we look at the work of Greg or Tom Ward, then we have to ask ourselves this question: is finding an art style actually necessary to becoming a successful artist? Well, if we look at their work, you could say that they have some kind of art style, but you could also say that they borrowed an art style from another artist who made those comics, who made those superheroes, who made those Disney figures, and they simply formulated some kind of critique on that in a process, a strategy that has been going on for hundreds of years. There are thousands of artists who have used pop culture and critiqued it in some kind of way. And so is this really having your own art style? Well, we could at least at the very minimum argue about that. And so what does this mean? Well, it means that using references from pop culture, using these existing images, could be a solution for people who don't find their art style. It could relieve them from that pressure. And so if you are struggling with these things, then perhaps this is something that you should try out. Perhaps this is something that will free yourself from all of these struggling, conflicting feelings that you have. Now, there's one thing I have to clarify about one of the strategies that we just explored. It's something that is extremely crucial. If you don't get this, then whatever you do, no matter how successful it is, it will all be for nothing. Here's the thing. All the way in the beginning of my art career, I actually used one of these strategies with great success, except for one thing. So here's what I did. I developed a painting medium that was extremely provocative, extremely different, extremely engaging for the audience, because I believe that if I would do that, that there would be natural, organic reach within the artwork, that people would start sharing that and the whole thing. you know. And so here's what I did. I developed a way to paint with lightning from the sky. 30,000 volts of static electricity that would flow through the painting while I was painting, leaving a mark inside of the painting. And the results were absolutely astonishing. You could see the lightning traveling through the painting and making a print inside of the painting. Was just mesmerizing. And here's what happened. I participated in some kind of competition. People noticed it and they started sharing things on Tumblr. One of my friends, after a couple of weeks, came to me and said like, hey dude, I saw that your paintings are being shared on Tumblr. It already got 26,000 shares, and then I checked it a couple of weeks later, 35,000 shares or something. And so what does that mean, 35,000 shares? Well, it means that millions of people were watching it, interacting with it. And then the question that we can ask ourselves, how effective was this strategy? What did I actually get from this? Well, here's the thing. I didn't have a website yet. People couldn't contact me. There was no place where people could buy my work online. I didn't have any social media pages, and so there was literally no way to reach me in any way whatsoever. And so I got nothing from this. No sales, no followers, nothing. And so what can we learn from this? Well, simple. No matter how many media institutions talk about your work, no matter how effective your marketing strategies are, no matter how many shares you get online, if you don't have a place to sell your art online or offline, nobody is going to buy your work. And so these are very important questions to ask ourselves. What is the best place to sell your art online? And there are many choices. You could go for your own website. You could go for online galleries or online marketplaces like Etsy and eBay. And the reality here is that if you make the wrong choice, then your conversion rates will be non-existent and you will still not sell anything. And so these are important questions to ask. What is the best place to sell your art online? And so we should be talking about that. But I'm very sorry, we are not going to do that, predominantly because I already did in another video called Best Place to Sell Your Art Online, Sell Your Paintings Fast. Links in the description and in the end screen. That said, get the hell out of here.